Hello everyone, my name is Richa Mahajan, Assistant Professor from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Jagannath University, Jaipur. Today my topic is wildlife. How to work for a wildlife photography. In this lecture, we will talk about techniques for photographing wildlife. Believe it or not, there are opportunities everywhere for your practice. Taking photos of wildlife, from squirrels to insects in your own backyard to plants and animals in zoos, parks, and even exotic locations. In this lecture, we will talk about setting up a blind, and we will learn how some special techniques and equipments that will help you to get close your subject without scaring them away. First one is field shoot, backyard wildlife. One way to take pictures of wildlife in your yard is to cover an open doorway with a length of camouflage cloth. Cut a small slit in the cloth for your lens and sit quietly, waiting for birds to arrive at your feeder or squirrels to scamper around your trees. Make sure your equipment is set up ahead of time and again plan to shoot early just before sunrise. Before you set up your equipment, decide what elements will appear in the frame. In this shoot, the bird feeder and some fencing will be in the photographs, and the background will be lush and green. For this shoot, the camera was set on the aperture priority and 1600 ISO to allow a fast shutter speed. A 200 to 400 lens was used to blur the background. A Wimberley head was used, which is a tripod head that pivots smoothly. This setting and equipment allows you to concentrate on shooting the animals which may be moving quickly. As you shoot, do not forget to chip. Check the picture on the back of your camera to make sure it is sharp and look at the histogram. Make sure the information is not touching the right. Right is equal to bright, so you do not blow out any of the highlights and lose details. Next is a secret weapon you can use in photographing wildlife at a radio remote trigger which costs about $100. With this, you can set up a camera closer to the action, place the radio receiver on the top, then next is locations for shooting wildlife. So first is wildlife. A set up with camouflage curtain is called a blind or a hide. Many wildlife sanctuaries have public blinds for viewing and photographing wildlife. Check with local nature groups to find out what kind of wildlife events take place in your area. You may be on migratory path for monarch butterflies, or your country may be nesting spot for rare birds. If you are near the water, you can find out where shorebirds nest or where they gather to feed. Zoos that feature educational animals also offer opportunities to get great photographs. Often, you can get very close to these animals, especially if they are being handled by staff members. You might also visit a local aquarium. If your animal subjects are in enclosures, you may have to wait patiently for them to be active. To eliminate the wire of an enclosure, use a long lens and press it right up against the wire. In most cases, the wire in the foreground will vanish because the long lens has such shallow depth of field. Never misprint the photos of captive animals as wild. Use photos of captions to identify whether the situation was controlled or truly wild. Next one is flower photos. Many people shoot flowers when they start out with nature photography, and almost everyone uses a macro lens. With a wide open aperture and a macro lens, the result is very shallow depth of field, with only the subject of even part of the subject sharp. Often these photographs look like watercolor paintings. Try experimenting with different apertures and shutter speed when you are shooting flowers. If it is not a windy day, the flowers are not moving, so set up a tripod and cable release and try using a tiny aperture and a slow shutter speed. Visit a botanical garden in your area to shoot photos of a variety of flowers that you probably won't find in your backyard. Be on the lookout too for insects feeding on plants or flowers, and remember, the closer your flash is to the subject, the softer the light will be. Next is traveling to shoot wildlife. When you travel to shoot wildlife, expect to do about 1 day of research at home before you go. For each day, for each day you plan to spend in the field, you should find out the peak times for seeing the animals or plants you want to shoot. You also want to know what the weather will be like and how close you can get to the animals without disturbing them. If you have done your research, you may be able to find locations where animals in the wild are habituated to people. For example, the bears in the Denali National Park are accustomed to seeing people take photographs. In many places, you can drive through wildlife parks and photograph animals that won't run away from your car. If possible, scout the location where you will be shooting ahead of time. Talk to other photographers who have been there or hire a local guide. In fields shoots, a long lens is often a must. If you can't get close to something, even a 300 mm lens will be an important tool. You can also use a teleconverter, a device that magnifies your lens to get closer to your subject. Remember, if you are using a long lens, you may want to support it with a tripod. If it is dark outside, you may need a tripod and a cable release to keep the camera from vibrating when you press the shutter button. Standard kit for photographing wildlife. It's nice to have a variety of lenses for photographing wildlife. A 140 a 124 mm is a good landscape lens, but it can also be used with a radio remote to take pictures of animals. A 24 to 70 is a workhorse lens that can also be used for wildlife. A 70 to 200 works well for aerial shots, and a 200 to 400 is a good size long lens. Longer lenses are available, but they are heavy to carry. Your kit should also include a flash and a portable softbox. Next is think about photographing wildlife the same way you do photographing people. You want to get close and have repeated access to your subject. Keep a macro lens with you because you never know when you are going to need it. When you are photographing large animals, you may see a great flower or insect at your feet. Next is photo analysis. Bird series. A series of photographs of birds taken in their habitats recalls the work of the famous wildlife artist John James Audubon. Audubon. The series was taken in consultation with bird biologists to avoid disturbing the birds or their chicks. A picture of an eastern bluebird was shooting using a radio remote trigger and a softbox. When the equipment is in place and unmanned, the birds do not react to it as something foreign in the environment. Cliff swallows can be found under bridges or in other places near flowing water. In this series, part of the goal was to show the type of the habitat preferred by the birds. The photo of a red-headed woodpecker was taken in the photo of the red-headed woodpecker was taken in the deep forest using a wide-angle lens on a nest cavity. The subtle light is the result of using the softbox. These photos are These photos are all close, well lit, and intimate because they also show some of the context. They are true environmental portraits. All the shots were achieved by learning about nest sites and feeding habits of the birds. Next is for a picture of Baltimore Oriole, dummy equipment was left out in the open for a period of time so that birds would become accustomed to it. Food was put out for the birds but cropped out of the picture. In wildlife photography, again, research and patience pay off. Set up the equipment, go sit in the lawn chair a great distance away, and watch the scene through binoculars to see when your subjects are in a good position. Cameras that make very little noise are helpful for photographing wildlife. You can also use a remote camera which sends out an infrared plus pulse to detect animals, then shoot the pictures. Such cameras are expensive, but they allow you to get exceptional photos. Next is takeaway points for photographing wildlife. Show respect and care in photographing animals. Your goal should be to show them behaving normally, sleeping, feeding, playing, and so on, not running away from your camera. Both federal and state laws prohibit people from harassing animals in the wild or forcing them to abandon their nest or their young. Use a long lens and a wide open aperture and remote to make sure your background goes soft. You don't need to too much you do not need too much depth of field in a busy scene. Get close to your subjects, especially small subjects such as frogs, turtles, insects, and flowers. Thank you so much. That's all for the day.